The Smite Update is proudly sponsored by SmiteTube.com, a new up-and-coming Smite community website dedicated to weekly Smite tournaments, articles, and excellent Smite content videos. Show your support and check out SmiteTube.com. Also, please check out the Smite Update's second sponsor, Tweaked Audio. Go to tweakedaudio.com for high-performance, noise-reducing earbuds. Use the code OctanePro to get 33% off plus free shipping anywhere in the world. Check out tweakedaudio.com today. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the Smite Update. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 24 of the Smite Update. Today we have a special segment, the Smite Roundtable Discussion. With me today, going around the table here, is we have Katrixxia. How's it going, Katrixxia?
Hi.
We have Blake. Blake, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how are you?
We have, as always, Risty. Risty, welcome back.
Hey, always good to be here.
And we have as well Buddha. Buddha, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we also have the MIA Hi-Rez Kelly not joining us today. So hopefully she'll be able to join us here in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go through a little bit of each of our guests here. Katrixxia is a Smite streamer and content producer. We have Blake, who's the tournament administrator for the Smite Weeklies, hosted by Hi-Rez Studios. We have Buddha. Buddha is actually a StarCraft 2 caster with appearances on Major League Gaming's Pro Circuit and other organizations. And then Kelly wasn't able to join us. She is the esports coordinator. So let's go ahead and actually throw it over to Risty, who's kind of going to go over how the roundtable necessarily works.
Well, we got like a load of questions kind of all set up. So we'll go through the questions, and probably a lot of the questions feel like they're aimed at a certain set of people. So we'll kind of throw it at those people that it's probably most relevant to, and then everyone else can jump in. So like esports could throw it to like Blake or Buddha and stuff like that. Anything else we can go round. So yeah, it's just pretty much go to one person, then anybody else can join in after that straight away.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the questions, guys. We have quite a few different questions ranging from God discussion to recent Smite announcements, game modes, new player scene, casual scene, and finally the competitive scene. And then at the end of the show, we will actually have an interview with Hi-Rez Todd Harris. It is a pre-recorded just about 2 hours ago with him. And that'll be a pretty cool interview, so make sure you guys do stick around for that. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our first question here. Hi-Rez recently announced the plans to remove ranked queue and implement a system Hi-Rez is currently calling Mastery Conquest. As of right now, requiring a player to have mastered 12 gods to participate. What are your thoughts on these plans? Let's go ahead and throw it over to Katrixxia first and get her thoughts on this.
I think that it is really awesome. I think it's a really good idea to have it so that like it's more based off of what your skills are, and I think that it could be a pretty good way to do it versus an ELO system.
Sure. Blake, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, you play a pretty good amount of Smite casually as well. I mean, we're not hardcore players here. What are your thoughts on the 12 kind of god setup here?
I mean, I can definitely see, why the thought process behind kind of redoing the system is there. Such a small percentage of the population actually plays ranked right now, and it kind of leads to some some server issues, some matchmaking issues. It's been this company that we're going to try something. We have the community here. We're going to throw it at you, and I think we're all kind of used to that by now. If it doesn't work, we'll obviously let them know. They'll hear us, and kind of go back to the drawing board. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with kind of testing out a different way to do things.
Sure, sure. I mean, the big thing we've seen is as you said, their rank necessarily doesn't work right now. We do understand that. We're looking at it. We can see that as casual players and also just people involved in the community. I mean, only a certain set of players play ranked. Everyone else just kind of plays around it. And it's not good for a competitive atmosphere because casual players should have that opportunity. I guess I'll throw this over to Buddha, too, to kind of get his input. The rank system doesn't work for Smite, and Hi-Rez is kind of scrambling to do something in order to kind of pull them in. What effect do you think this competitive play has on a MOBA, hence being your background in a lot of the esports?
Now, Octane, let's pretend that someone doesn't know very much about Smite or ranked.
That's right, exactly.
How would you describe it to them?
Sure. So those of you guys unfamiliar, Buddha is new to Smite, and I wanted to bring on somebody that is like completely new to Smite, but not new necessarily to the esports scene when it comes down to StarCraft 2 or League of Legends. And pretty much what ranked is exactly what we would see in StarCraft 2. Imagine StarCraft 2 did not have a ranked system, or the ranked system it did have, barely anybody played it. What type of effect would that have on a game like that?
So there's no gauge on how good somebody is with a number or anything.
Well, there is a number sequence that they do have, but the thing is that there's no leagues or anything. It's just a giant number pool. Just imagine that. That's all it is. Just a giant number pool, and they know it doesn't work, so they're trying to do something different. I mean, I guess you can contest with games like StarCraft 2 how that just wouldn't fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. I mean, if you're trying to have a competitive esport, you definitely need to have some way to gauge, how, not necessarily how good everyone is, but how well they're ranked by how much they win or lose. And if you don't have something like that in place, it's hard to find the best players. And sure, the really good ones will pop up, by streaming and obviously like being the best people watching them all the time. But you definitely need some kind of hard evidence, I guess.
Sure, definitely. Before I go ahead and jump over to the next question, Kelly, you with us?
Right. I believe I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, so you're good to go there.
Yeah, sorry. I was in the middle of editing a video, and I got wrapped up in it. I sincerely apologize.
That's okay. We're actually just jumping on here, moving right past our first question, right actually into our God discussion question. And,
hang on, I got a bit on that one.
Sure, please, go ahead.
Yeah, it was, I kind of see it like... It's just a hyped up casual queue, to be honest. There's no reason with ranked. There's like, okay, people that play ranked want to play feel they want to play competitively. It's a bit more of a step up from casual.
Sure.
Now this one, basically, all this feels like they've changed the requirements from the level 6 in casual. I think that's the level 6 to then go up to play pretty much anybody to just master 12 gods, which they could probably put in the casual, keep everybody down. Till they've mastered the first 12 gods and kind of move up that way. But now they've taken the ranked out. Where are the people that are going to go that actually want to play a ranked?
Sure.
Where want to play like that. So it's kind of just like completely cut everybody off that liked ranked and now forcing them to just do casual queue all the time.
Sure.
That's pretty much all it's going to be.
Yeah, and I know it's kind of confusing. I mean, Rez has posted twice over the past week or so about it, and until more details come out, it's kind of up in the air. So we'll kind of have to see. But let's go ahead and jump into our second question here. This is under our God discussion. This question is always up for debate, but let's throw it around here. Currently in-game, which God do you feel needs their skill kit reworked to keep up with some of the current gods that are starting to be released? So let's go ahead and start out with Blake on this one.
Oh, man, I was thinking about this earlier, and I feel like people usually go to Bastet. I don't know. I feel like I would like to see Bakasura come back into the competitive scene. Like, when he first came out, he was awesome because he was kind of OP. Mm-hmm. And I've never really seen anybody kind of pick him back up and take him into the jungle. And I think it's because even though his jump does provide a little bit of kind of damage reduction,
Sure.
most of the gods people tend to pick have some form of CC, which, I mean, his ult kind of provides it slow, but it's not really enough to kind of be one of those top tier god picks. So I would love to see Bakasura kind of reimagined, because I think his kit is awesome.
Sure. Let's throw that over to Kelly. Kelly is Hi-Rez employee, so she can kind of give a little insight. But Kelly, just from your perspective, who do you want to see kind of redone, hopefully in the future?
Well, you could look at it a little bit inversely. A lot of people have issues with ranged ADCs such as Neith Apollo on her, and that they have too much in their kit. So in my opinion, I don't think the quote-unquote lower gods need to be changed. I think that maybe kits all around, from maybe the ones that have too much of a kit, should be changed to adhere to the rest of the gods and how their utilities work. Now, I know a lot of people would complain about this because a lot of people like Apollo and On Her and Neith and just their versatility and everything, and how they have they have slows and stuns and mezzes, etc., etc. And I could turn my webcam on. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the the stream right now. But I think that instead of, I really don't think Bastet and Bakasura are really necessarily bad. I think that there's just so many other gods that are so much better in the roles that they have.
Sure. So that's actually a really good point. I mean, as even in competitive scene or even in the casual scene, you're trying to pick the person that it can be best in that role. The best tank or the best mid laner or jungler. And as you said there are a lot of gods which are kind of, they're okay, but they're nothing crazy. And so there's always a better choice. What do you think, Katrixxia?
Hey, I'm talking. I couldn't remember if I muted my mic or not. I think that in general, like, balance, I think it's more like people need to think more about how balance isn't easy to do in general. And there's a lot of things that could happen to most of the gods, I think, to make them more balanced as a whole. It's not necessarily one or another god that's too strong or too weak. I think that it's just, it's a matter of balancing in general. But overall, I think that, like, it also depends on the players that you're playing with and against, their skill levels. So some things can be balanced in one game, but then you can play another game against the same god, but they just own you. And I think for me it's something that's hard to say, and I think that from a developer standpoint, it's also like something it's not as easy as people seem to think it is on Reddit and stuff.
Sure, definitely. Any last comments on that topic before we move on to another question?
I actually have one, and it's not on a specific god or anything because I don't really know too many of them. But,
no, please. But we're always looking for new player input.
This is, I guess, coming from other games, I guess. But
Sure.
StarCraft is known as a game that has, near perfect balance, where in every matchup there are a certain number of things that you can do, and there are a certain number of things that your opponent can do to kind of help deal with that or whatever. And if any one thing works 100% of the time, then it's too powerful and it needs to be nerfed, right?
Sure.
So that's an example of what I like to call perfect balance, where StarCraft really tries to hit the nail on the head with you have to be doing something perfectly in order to beat something else. But in MOBAs like Dota, League of Legends, and Smite, I don't know. I like to call it perfect imbalance, where everything is so powerful that it can always beat something else. But then there are so many options, and everything else is also so powerful that it comes down to how are you going to meld these incredibly powerful things together to beat the other team's imbalance? If that makes sense. Like,
Sure.
Everything is too good, and you have to make it so that everything can be beat, but maybe in a different way. So maybe these old gods that used to be really good are actually good against some of the new ones that seem to be too powerful, and we just haven't seen a combination of them yet that can really compete.
No, that's a really good point, actually. I didn't think of it like that. Any last comments before we move on?
No.
All right, let's go ahead into our second question here. Smite originally started out applying one role per god, yet over the past year, that god model has dissipated. We now see the hybrid god model almost apply across the board in one way or another. Would you prefer Hi-Rez to continue this direction or migrate back to the original god model? Let's go ahead and throw this over to Katrixxia.
That is another. I think that I want to see diversity, but it's also important to kind of think about balance as well, and it might be considered easier to balance if you do like one specific like role per god. But I think that in a perfect world, it'd be really cool if they went more in the direction of more being able to do different things with different gods, being able to have physical items on magical characters and that sort of thing. I think that's something that's really important to make a game more interesting and fun, and to like be able to do different things. That's what makes it exciting and all that for different players.
Sure. What do you think, Blake?
I don't know. It's kind of one of those things that you really, I don't know. It's all conceptualized, because I imagine you could look at, I think Athena is a pretty interesting god where, you have a jungle Athena who is pretty strong. I've seen Lassus play jungle Athena a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a laning Athena who can babysit just as good as a Sobek can. And then you can also have kind of a tank Athena, a bruiser Athena. Like, you just have so many different builds with that. So it does give you a lot of variety in the god that you can play. But I think it goes down to, do you want every single god to have all that customized, all be entirely customizable? Or do you want gods to fill niche roles? And I don't think there's not really a right answer there, I don't think.
Sure.
So I think you either go one direction or the other. I don't know. It's really hard to pick a definitive answer there.
Sure. I know, Riz, you have some input on this. You've been around for a while. We've talked about this a few times on the Smite update in previous episodes. But what's your standpoint on this?
I like kind of there's some good points going out, really, to be honest. I like the support kind of like being useful through like CC and all that stuff rather than massive damage output. But it's all going to come down to a god's kit, what they're going to be used for in quite a lot of stuff. There's kind of, as long as the kit's not too extreme, and actually if they find that players somehow find an extreme to it, they then kind of nerf it or balance it either way. It's just a kind of a touchy tightrope. I do generally like single one roll per god and stuff like that. But
Sure.
Then again, if you can build stuff differently, I don't mind too much. I just kind of feel it should be restricted. You shouldn't be able to build half and half and be able to do massive amount of, like, half a tank, half DPS, and do massive amount of damage. It feels a bit weird to me. But then obviously, like, it's down to the kits they can have. So it's just kind of one that I've kind of backed off a little bit recently. I just want to kind of see how they go with it.
Sure. Kelly, you've been around for a while, actually, in the scene, and you're actually coming from an employee of Hi-Rez.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of questionnaires go out regarding this topic over the past year or so. Is there any insight you can give as to what directions seems to be working better than another?
Well, it was really interesting. I was in the middle of a discussion with someone, I think it was last week or the week before that, and one of our lead developers was trying to give a role to one of the next gods they were producing, and someone else was saying, well, there's, like, each god doesn't need a role. You could give a god a kit and just let people decide its own role. Kind of like how Athena's working, like what, I forgot who was saying this, but like Lassus plays jungle Athena, which no one assumed when Athena first came out, and she's a really good jungle. She's one of the best, especially because of her ult. And I think that gods in the future could potentially just not exactly have a designated role, but just have a kit and then just kind of figure out where they fit into the mold. Unfortunately, in future developments, I can't really talk about what we are developing and everything like that. But personally, I think that gods don't necessarily need a specific role to be like drawn out and put into like their god description. I think that giving a god a kit that fits their lore and that's balanced to a sense could be really interesting just to see how the players make that god.
Yeah, that would definitely start to separate Smite from other MOBAs as well. Because as soon as you jump into other MOBAs, I mean, everything's so defined, Hey, you want your assassins, you click here, you filter it out because they have so many gods, here's what you got. This would really separate Smite as well as another factor in, hey, it all comes down to your gameplay and your game choices compared to something preset for you. So that would actually be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. The next question here, and I'll go ahead and throw it out there. If you could implement one ultimate into Smite that you've seen in other games or a television character has, what would that idea be? And I'll actually throw this back to Kelly to start out here.
Spirit Ball from Dragon Ball Z.
How did I know it? How did I know you were going to do a Dragon Ball Z reference?
I don't know if you can see right here. Anything from Dragon Ball Z would be awesome. Final Flash, anything like that. Kamehameha. I mean, I guess Ra's ult is pretty much a Kamehameha.
Sure.
To have an ult from any kind of show that I've seen, global ults are really interesting, but they need to be used very scarcely, because if you give too many gods global ults, they're just too overpowered.
Sure.
I don't know. Honestly, a Spirit Ball would be really cool.
Okay.
Have an AoE up in the air, collecting energy, and you could have even how many players are near you in a map give you a certain amount of energy, like Goku collects the energy from people from the universe, and then it does more damage. That'd be pretty cool, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm just nerding out.
You know, she's thought about this before. It comes up in the daydreams. It's like, okay, how can I get Dragon Ball Z slowly implemented into Smite nonchalantly? Buddha, let's go ahead and throw it over to you. What ultimates? Now, granted, you do have a limited knowledge. You're a new player. That's why I brought you on the show. But what ultimates have you that you could come up with that you'd like to see applied in Smite? You and I have played plenty of threes, plenty of arenas. What kind of information? What do you think?
Yeah, one of the issues I have is I don't know all the gods, so I don't know all the ultimates. But I think one of the coolest ults that I've seen in other games is Hecarim from League of Legends. He basically dashes a pretty long distance across the map, and in an area of effect, he fears everyone, so everyone starts running around and doesn't have anything to... You can't do anything unless you have a QSS or a cleanse, and I know there is an item in Smite that I've bought, but I don't remember the name of, that removes stun effects or something.
Sure. Yep, purification beads. Yep.
Yes, that one. Thank you. It would force people to either buy that or not group up so much, or find a way to deal with that ahead of time, kind of. And there are ways to deal with it in the other games, but I think really, really cool hard initiates are super exciting to watch and can lead to some really cool team fights. Yeah,
no, that's definitely true. Risty, what about you?
I actually I asked the question before with Duke. I said about track kill from Dota 2, but I've actually kind of changed my mind a bit.
Okay.
Marana from Dota 2 that has a global ultimate that stealths everybody and gives them extra movement speed. So basically Loki stealth, but for a group.
Huh.
That'd be kind of interesting.
That almost sounds like an ability item, though. Now that I think of it, that could be a really cool ability item to, catch somebody off guard at a fire giant or catch somebody off guard at a gold fury. That's actually a really cool idea. Blake, what about you, sir?
I think it would be really cool to have a...
Oh, you cut out there for a sec.
Uh-oh.
That's my favorite ult.
Alright, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
silent.
you. Yep.
I think it'd be really cool to have an ultimate, and I don't know how it would work, but it's just an interesting idea, I feel like, to where you can steal somebody else's ultimate on the enemy team. So you pick this god, and it's like a copycat to a certain degree, so you're like, okay, well, we're getting initiated on, so I need this ultimate to fit this situation. So you would copy that character's ultimate on the enemy team and then kind of turn it around against them. So I think it'd be interesting to see in competitive picks, too, because you're like, oh, man, they got the copycat guy. We're going to have to really make sure that we don't have any ultimates that can be turned around on us or something like that. It may be too overpowered. It probably is. But I think it'd be a cool idea nonetheless.
Well, it's like a Rubik, from Dota 2, which works really well. It's definitely a balanced one, because if you've got the skill in the game already, it fits. So, I can kind of understand it working with all the... can you imagine that? You're in the depths of the enemy base, and somebody the chariot comes in from Apollo, and then you go, I was going to have that one. But it's got to be one of them ones last used ability is the one that gets stolen rather than select a load. So it's going to have a bit of skill on which skill you get. But
yeah, that would make more sense.
And let's go ahead and throw it over to Katrixxia. Katrixxia, what do you have? What last thoughts here? Give us a good one.
All right. At first, I wasn't really sure, and then I was like, well, And I'm pretty happy because like Neith's ult is similar to like I used to play Caitlyn in League of Legends all the time, and like that's close enough. But then I was just thinking that like when I played League of Legends, I thought it'd be really cool if they had a champion that was like some sort of like voodoo witch doctor, and like the ultimate would be like they could take control of an enemy player. That's not something reasonable or realistic to have in a game, and it wouldn't necessarily be fun for the player being controlled. But like I still think it'd be kind of cool to like have something where you could take control of another player if it wouldn't suck for them. Maybe like you could take control of them for like just a couple seconds or just enough time to like use their ultimate or something. Like in Magic the Gathering, there's cards that'll let you take control of an enemy card for a turn and use their abilities. So like you can use one ability, say, during that ultimate time. I think that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that could be implemented because you do have the counter there with beads in order to counter it. So, it is there. I mean, that is usable, believe it or not. And I think everyone actually had really cool ideas. I'm actually impressed. Last panel, we did a similar question, and they were not as good as this. So, good answers there. I'm going to go ahead and shoot off with the last question in regards to under the God kind of category. What mechanic added to the game do you feel has made the greatest impact and why? And I'll throw that back to Katrixxia.
I spaced out. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. What mechanic added to the game do you feel has made the greatest impact?
Oh, that one. And yeah. I feel like the obvious answer is is leaps and is jumps and leaps. Even though they've been into the game the whole time, technically they were added to the game at some point.
Sure.
But I mean, I guess other than that, like probably Cripple probably has. Because that's something that has stopped the obvious answer of leaps and dashes and all of that. And so I think that would probably be more, because that is a good, well, it's a counter towards to having as many jumps and leaps as there are in the game.
Sure. What do you think, Blake?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Cripple. I feel like that was a really big change.
God, to happen again.
Blake, you got out again, man.
That's all right. Okay, we'll throw it over to Kelly while Blake figures things out. Go ahead, Kelly.
I really think the implementation of global ults has made a huge impact in the game. There wasn't really global ults in the beginning until I believe Neith was the first one, or maybe Thor. And all 4 gods that have global ults are huge, game changers: Thor, Athena, Apollo, and Neith. And I feel like global ults, you can do a lot of really interesting things with them. A bit of them are overpowered, but I feel like global ults are really interesting and a very interesting mechanic along with that.
Oh yeah, it's a completely different gameplay style too, and communication with your teams as well, because you're communicating with teams completely across the map for somebody like Shablanca and stuff like that. So
definitely,
I could see that. Risty, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I think me and you both kind of said it. I think I'm going to steal your one, to be honest.
That's okay, go for it.
We both kind of thought about it, and I kind of agree with you fully. When Thor was introduced, his ultimate going up in the air, it was the first time you've ever seen a MOBA where you break that 2D plane pretty much, apart from leaps, and you go straight up.
Sure.
And you've got all that extra room to move around in. That was kind of game changing, and I know you've said about it before as well. That's just the fact that you can go in the air, fly around, and everything else is happening below you is definitely a big change.
Oh yeah, and that definitely opens up the playing field for high-res developers, where hey, you're no longer limited to just the ground floor per se. And it's it goes the opposite direction too. I mean, they can might possibly be able to go underground now. I mean, Sobek and Hades kind of have their dives per se with the ultimate and also with Hades dive, but what stops them from putting into effect? Hey, you can go up. Why can't you go down?
We're gonna have Smite tunnels.
That's right. You're gonna have tunnels built. That's
Tunnel
right.
system.
That's right.
Yeah.
Blake, any last comments there from you?
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to agree with most everybody else and say that Cripple was definitely a big addition to the game. I would say also probably more recently Teleport. I feel like his
Oh yeah, definitely.
Teleport has really changed the meta quite a bit. Cripple and Teleport.
It gives tanks a whole new purpose now.
Oh yeah. It gives lane phasing a whole new purpose now.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Where is everybody? We're here.
Yeah, right here, right on top of you. Hello. That's great for
Pretty much.
jungling too, though. You got to think of it like now with jungling. I mean, you don't have to slowly come out of the jungle. You can line it up perfectly and just teleport directly on top of the person. So it does gives that effect. I've even seen people using like blink on gods like Anubis as an escape because they are so squishy and such a glass cannon in order just to have that ability. So I think all of them said there, the cripples, the blinks, the global alts, are all very, very good options there. I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Risty, who's going to go over some of the game mode questions.
So right now, Conquest 5v5 is kind of the main focus of the competitive scene, but we've seen an addition to like the Joust 3v3. Seen a lot of interest in the competitive scene. We've got the Smite Tube 3v3 tournament, which we cast time to time. So it's getting a lot of interest from that and developing a competitive scene there. What is it about 3v3 that you feel draws players in? Let's go with Kelly. Go on.
Well, with 3v3 compared to 5v5, there's just a lot less discussion and variables of like what to do, and especially because people play 3v3 in the Joust arena, it's not like there's 3 lanes and like a jungle and everything. There's just, the 2 side jungle lanes and then the middle lane. And I feel like 3v3 is just easier to coordinate together and be able to communicate with your teammates and everything of what to do and when to do it. And with 5v5, I feel like that's a bit more confusing. People aren't able to master it as easy as they are something like 3v3. Now, that's not saying 3v3s are easy. That's not saying that anyone can become the top team of a 3v3. But I feel like the learning curve is a lot easier for 3v3 than it would be for a 5v5 conquest tournament.
Yeah, there's less to take on, isn't there, really?
Throw it over to Buddha, actually. Buddha, you played a pretty good amount of 3v3 with me. We do a lot of 3v3 on my stream. What are your thoughts there? I mean, we played a little bit of 5v5, but is 3v3 more appealing to you, especially as a new player?
By a whole lot. I mean, I get to see all of the gods. Sorry, I'm going through my head. It's not champions, it's not heroes, it's gods. I get to see all the gods at the same time. I get to kind of get a feel for their abilities as a new player that doesn't really know very many abilities.
Sure.
And in a lot of cases, I get to sit there and play relatively shorter games with one person, get a feel for them, and then decide, do I want to play them again or not? And it's not a long game like a 5v5 where if we throw the game, it's like, oh, people have to sit here and wait for us to lose because I'm failing. It's a lot closer most of the time, I feel, and I really get a better feeling for the game, even though I don't really get an idea for the meta of the 5v5, and I don't learn how to jungle, I don't learn how to necessarily lane or anything. As far as competitive goes, though, it's hard for me to judge Smite on this aspect, but StarCraft, the game is balanced for 1v1s. League of Legends, the game is balanced for 5v5s. Dota, the game is balanced for 5v5. There are other game modes that people play for fun, but the game isn't balanced around that, and there are definitely people, or champions, or heroes, or gods that are going to be more powerful in a game mode in a confined space like this.
Sure. That's actually a better answer than I thought.
Okay.
Octane, I'm the king of answering questions.
You're the biggest BSer in the world. That's okay.
Pretty much. So, we're going to the next one. So, over the past year, we've seen several game mods added to Smite. So, like, we've got ARAM, we've got the 3v3 Joust and stuff like that, to make it more attractive for a larger player base. What game mode would you like to see in Smite next to help bring in more people, pretty much? I'm going to actually get Buddha's kind of perspective on this, seeing as he is a new player, kind of maybe bring in some fresh perspective, possibly.
That's really interesting.
Put him on the spot. Ooh.
Why would you do this? I was the king of answering questions for the last question, not this one.
Because I can.
Interesting. I'm not 100% sure what all of the game modes are,
Sure.
but oh god, I'm gonna ask a question and it's gonna sound really stupid because I don't play a lot of 5v5s, and the people I play with don't know how to play either. So,
Sure.
for 5v5s, is there a meta like in League where you have like a support and a carry, or no?
Support carry, yeah.
A support and a carry in one lane, and they like lane
pretty
into
much.
each other
Yeah, you get the
sometimes?
ranged, yeah.
All right. I don't know. This is gonna be a pretty bad answer, but maybe like a 2v2, so new players can learn like the different supports and carries and matchups and skills and learn the lane without having to deal with ganks or anything like that.
Dang you.
I don't know.
That's another
That's
good
fair.
answer, because if you think of it, like when you're in lane, you usually a lot of the times you are in a 2 versus 2. You are in a 2 versus 2 situation. And there actually is not a game mode right now necessarily that puts you and a partner working together alone. I mean, we do a 3 versus 3, but it isn't 2 versus 2. And in most strategies, you don't see a 3 versus 3 in a lane style. So a decent answer, Buddha. I'll give it to you. A decent answer.
As a side note, for season 4, League of Legends is coming out with something very similar to that. I forget what it's called,
Okay.
but yeah, a 1v1 or 2v2 game mode. Or,
Huh. That's pretty cool. Why don't we go around the table? Anyone else's thoughts on a new game mode?
I have a few.
Go for it. You might as well.
So I think a 10-person free-for-all would be really cool. It'd be really hectic, but I think you could do a lot with that. I was talking, I forgot who it was, but I was talking with someone about having Smite minigames, and you could do something like where there's a AI Cupid that runs through the map and like releases the hearts, and people have to run around the map and collect the hearts. Just dumb stuff like that. There was another one that I forgot what it was, where you had to follow Apollo through all these like rings, and it had to be like a chariot race. But having Smite mini games, you know how StarCraft, they have the customizable mode where you
Yep.
do a bunch of stuff. I used to do Nexus Wars like every day, constantly.
It's addicting.
And it is, and I think stuff like that would be super cool. But I love mini games. I thrive off of mini games. Pokemon Stadium mini games are like my bread and butter. So I think it'd be really cool if Smite had some mini games like that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking it was great. Remember that time when we like the game broke on us, and we all just decided to run to the enemy well, who could get there first?
Oh yes,
That'd
we
be
did.
really cool, right?
Yeah, we did. We did Smite races, and everybody picked certain items you couldn't use, and you couldn't buy anything, and you couldn't use any abilities. They just didn't activate. This was months ago, and so we were like, all right, let's go ahead, buy our items, ready, set, go, and we ran across the map, and the first player to make it into the enemy's fountain won the game. So it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Stuff like that's cool, but that does require Smite Hi-Rez to open up kind of their
Oh, yeah.
system.
And something like Smite, it's incredibly strenuous for
Yeah.
people to be able to like edit it. It's almost impossible.
Is there a custom game function like where you can just set up whatever you want on whatever map?
Not to my knowledge.
There's a custom game option in regards to like
okay.
we could do a certain amount of players on one of the maps of our choice, and then you could add you could add 1,000,000 gold. You could set what levels they set at.
Wow.
But it's very
Okay.
that's about the extent. The levels you can adjust the gold level, and then how many players versus how many players, and it always has to be balanced. And you can't just put it out to the open and anybody joins it. My team would have to like message you, Buddha, and be like, "Hey, join the game. Here's the credentials. Come join us."
So
it's
there's
very
no open
limited.
kind of.
Mhm.
Okay.
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct. Why don't we throw it about the board? Katrixxia, what do you think?
Well, I didn't really have a comment on a new game mode because I'm pretty content with the game modes there are right now.
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of cool ideas, and I really like seeing when people post them on like the Reddit and stuff. Like, there's been cool ones like about like a labyrinth and stuff that's like randomly generated or procedurally generated, basically, and that kind of thing. And that seems really cool. But I haven't had an answer to the 3v3 question, but I wasn't asked it. So.
Well, you know what? Bring it back, and
Bring it
let's
back,
hear your
bring it
input.
back.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, because the question on the sheet was, why do you think people like it? And I think the main reason people like the 3v3 stuff is because it's a lot. You are with your team a lot more, and it's a lot more. I find it more team oriented than like I know Conquest obviously is team oriented, but like you're actually playing closely with your team the entire time. And I think that's something that's really fun and interesting to do. I think maybe the map could be a little bit different for it, but I think overall, like a 3v3 isn't like a bad idea to kind of expand on.
Well, that's a good point because 3 versus 3. I mean, if you remember when they first came out with it, Hi-Rez, it was kind of like a test. They were like, all right, we're gonna test it out, and they tried out 3 versus 3. It was pretty good. Then they were like, let's go ahead and try out 3 versus 3 ranked, and there's no guarantee we're gonna keep it. We're gonna see how it does, and it's been in for a while. So 3 versus 3 is almost like an afterthought. And we know how good Hi-Rez is at redoing the maps, how often they've redone them. So there might be an opportunity for a independent 3 versus 3 map in the future. Any other thoughts though on the 3 versus 3 or on a new game mode from anyone else?
Yeah, sorry. Actually, Kelly like revved my brain here because I don't know why I didn't think of this, but when she brought up like the fun mini games and stuff, we have a lot of really fun stuff in League that has nothing to do with Riot. They just open their games and make them custom games, so you can do whatever you want in them, basically. But players can make up their own games. It doesn't have to necessarily be a developer kind of centric thing.
Sure.
Like we have Kill the Soraka bot, so both teams have a bot that's really bad, and they just walk up to each other and attack each other. And so the other 4 of you are trying to kill the other person's Soraka and keep yours alive. And it's it's really dumb because the bots are really bad, but that's what makes it fun, right? It's like trying to pick things that are good at protecting and killing, and having really, really dumb fights centered around that. Sorry, so I guess my point is opening up a custom game that everybody can join and stuff would, I think, lead to people making up their own games, and I think there's a lot of different potential there.
Definitely.
Basically allow for modding or stuff like that to do.
I
Harder
have
to do, bit harder to
one
implement,
game
but yeah,
mode.
it's quite good. Yeah. No. Anything else? Anybody else? No.
I got one game mode.
Sure.
I thought it would always be cool to have a kind of a like an 8-bit version of Conquest 5v5. Because one of the cool things about Smite is it's all Unreal Engine and whatnot. But I think it would be cool to have just like a match of the day where it's like Minecraft Conquest. I don't know if it would work or not.
Rendering that would be insane.
I know, right?
That'd be so funny.
Everyone's complaining about getting like 20 FPS, it'd be like 2 FPS. It would be very 8-bit though.
And you can
Developers
pull
are
out your
watching.
shovel and build walls. And
Yes, right. Developers are watching this right now and being like, they don't understand. They don't understand. Oh my gosh.
All right then. That was quite cool. I like that. For new players in the scene, Smite's got a very large competitors. We've obviously got Riot, we got Dota, and stuff like that in the MOBA industry. What about Smite do you feel is most attractive to new players? Let's go with Katrixxia.
What's most attractive to new players?
Yeah.
I think that I find that Smite is pretty easy to get into. It's pretty accessible, especially to people who are not from the MOBA genre. Like if you're from like an MMO genre, it's something that is a lot easier to get into than like if you were like I remember I was playing World of Warcraft and then I started playing League, and I didn't like the QWER thing. I didn't get it. It didn't like work for me for a while. Obviously, I got used to it, but I was used to using my number keys. I was used to using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So I think that is something that can really help out the player. And the idea that you don't have to click around to move your character around if you're used to that kind of thing. I think that can help too. That's really it.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Do you want to go on that one?
I think she's hit the nail on the head.
Pretty
Anyone
much.
that's a FPS player or
Yeah.
World of Warcraft player or anything like that, they really get attached to Smite because of the way that it's played, the third-person style, instead of something like League or Dota where you have to click around, like in a game like Diablo 3. People just really aren't used to it. Now, there's nothing wrong with being able to click around and move, but people are just more comfortable in an FPS setting or like MMO setting to play Smite.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I got into Smite, to be honest, because I think I tried League or Dota, and I went, I don't do this clicking. I like to move with my keyboard. That's pretty much, it was just too much clicking for me. So I quite like the fact that I got into Smite as, obviously, from like a WoW player, but then it also opened the doors up to, like, once I've learnt the MOBA, I could then go to play some other ones, and it kind of felt a bit easier to kind of understand now I'd obviously got in. But now, yeah, I prefer using my keyboard to move around, especially.
StarCraft players unite behind all the clicking, right?
That's right.
Oh,
That's
pretty
right. Buddha, that is why I'm not that good at Smite. I knew it. That's why. Jeez.
So I think the most attractive thing for me looking at Smite is actually everything in the game is a skill shot, right? There's no targeted ability where, like in Dota or League, where you click on someone and it stuns them. In League there are skill shots, but it's over the top and stuff. But I love how in Smite everything you do has to be aimed, and if you miss, you miss. And I think that adds a huge element of skill and prediction, and on both sides, right, dodging and otherwise. So to me, I think that's.
Are you saying that
the number one.
Smite takes more skill than League of Legends?
No,
Sorry.
I would never say that. No, I'm terrible at League and Dota and Smite, so don't worry. I'm equally bad at all of them.
Anyway,
Actually, I'm
Arcane's
probably worse.
really bad at StarCraft 2 as well.
That's right. That's right.
Anybody else? Blake, got anything? Nope. Okay, so Hi-Rez have done a ton in the game to make Smite makes new players to Smite more comfortable as possible when learning a new game. Yet, where do you feel Hi-Rez could improve? Obviously, let's go with Buddha. Seeing as he's a new player and needs to learn a new game, go on, bring out some of these epic answers you're doing. I'm going to crush
Let
you
me
with one
read
of
the
them.
question first. Okay, so this is kind of weird, and it won't help anyone that knows the characters and stuff. But one of the things that I found myself doing every time I'm trying to learn a new god or whatever is I sit at spawn for the first like 1 minute of the game just reading my skills because I have no idea what they do, and I know I can go to a website and look at it and stuff, but on the loading screen maybe if maybe like have an option where you can like just hover over something and it'll bring up the tooltip still, or I don't know, and that's true for all MOBAs. No MOBAs actually have that, right? You actually have to like try the skill, or
actually in the lobby on the player like tile, you could when you're selecting it actually has all the skills below which you can highlight over. So that helps out.
Well, yeah, so does League and Smite, but I feel like the loading screen is like the worst part of the entire experience in all of the MOBAs, right? You're like sitting there like, well, who doesn't have an SSD here, right?
There's always one.
Yeah, and you're sitting there going, well, there's really nothing to do except watch your loading bar go up. So I don't know, maybe something along those lines to just help new players get into it, and then you can turn it off as a player that has a lot of experience if you already know that stuff.
Sure.
Because I know there are a lot of little effects and stuff that I don't recognize characters as having.
Okay. I'd throw that. Anybody else? Kelly, Blake, anybody?
I'll talk a little bit, not necessarily of how to make the game better for casual players, but there's a lot of debate of how to meet casual players and competitive players halfway. Like, you can't create a separate game that has, like, you know, a higher skill cap and everything for competitive players. It has to be all the same game. People that play on a competitive level are still going to be playing the same game that casual players play. And it's really difficult to have players be able to learn a game that's casual and easy for new players and still have it be able to be competitive and like very like skill capped and very difficult to master. And I feel like a lot of people take it for granted because there will be a lot of casual people that complain about it not being as easy to get used to, and there's a lot of competitive players saying that we make the game too casual and too easy for people to use, like such as Neath Salt, like you just point and click and you use it. And there's a lot of skills and a lot of stuff like that, and it's very difficult to modify it so that casual players and competitive players are looked at. So I think people need to keep that in mind when they think of like, oh, well, this game should be aimed more towards casual players and be easier, or the inverse of, oh, this game should be more like difficult and aimed towards competitive players. But that's my opinion. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's always a big argument. I mean, even in the StarCraft 2 scene, you see that argument all the time. You know, a lot of the game is actually balanced off the competitive player side, and people will argue, well, the competitive players are not the majority. And that same thing goes over to World of Warcraft. The longest time, you would see the game and the raids balanced off of the casual players because they were the majority. There was only a very small percentage of WoW which actually raided and actually was able to go completely through the raids, no problem, and actually complete some of the high-level raids. So it's a very good argument. It always comes down to, and it's hard on the publisher side, it comes down to who do we balance the game for? Is it the majority or is it the competitive side? Now, granted, the competitive side does fuel the casual side. So it's kind of, you know, it's back and forth. It's like, oh, which one do you go with? Who are we trying to please? And so you try to please everybody. And sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. So that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a nice fine tightrope really that they got, because you've got obviously a game that is you can learn pretty quickly the basic kind of aspects, but there's loads of little extras in Smite that if you can kind of master, like last hitting's not a big thing, but if you last hit, you get like a small bonus. Obviously, juking's excellent. If you can juke really well, you can save yourself from getting killed.
Sure.
And there's just loads of little extra bits that a competitive player can do over a casual player that can put them ahead, but it's not something that someone needs to learn to actually be able to play the game. It just kind of helps out a little bit.
Sure. Let's look over to how about Blake here. Blake, what are your thoughts? Where can we kind of help improve for a new player? Anything that sticks out to you?
I don't know. I mean, it is that, like everybody previously said, it is that tightrope balance where, okay, my biggest audience is technically the casual because, if everybody was super competitive, then there wouldn't really be a competitive scene, I imagine. There'd just be too much in kind of that pull. But at the same time, like, I don't know. It's definitely a tough question and a balancing act, and I think it's something that every single esport developer struggles with. On where do you balance? Who do we just milk the game for money through casuals and decide not to go to esports? Like, I think it really falls on the developers, and it is that just tightrope act.
Katrixxia, what are your thoughts? Anywhere we can improve for new players?
I hate when people split casual and competitive.
Okay.
Like, I hate that there's a stigma around casual players, and there shouldn't be one. Like, especially since I would be willing to bet money on that everyone here was once new to gaming and was once like considered a casual player, and now they talk down on them like they're a lesser thing, and they're not. They're what makes the game industry grow, and if you exclude them, the game industry will not grow, and it will just fall apart. It's not a club for just a couple people who are really good at something. That's not what it's about. Gaming is supposed to be all inclusive. It's not the whole thing, like, from back in the history of gaming, it was like, the nerdier people, the people who were more outcast or excluded from things, and they found something that they could not be excluded from, and nowadays they're excluding people. They're doing the same thing that they were trying to avoid in the first place. So I think that's something that is really important, is making sure that the competitive side is more inclusive of everybody, and I think it's more of a community thing rather than necessarily what Hi-Rez can do. It's something that we need to be doing. As far as making the game better, and rather than getting mad at someone for not doing so well, understanding that, one, it's a game and they can have fun, and that's okay as long as they're not harassing somebody or doing something intentionally to make somebody else upset. Like, as long as they're having fun and enjoying themselves, that's what matters. And if they're a lot of times there'll people who be like, I'm sorry, I'm doing really poorly, and people still yell at them. It's not, you don't yell at them. You need to be inclusive and be like, it's okay, everyone has bad games, and maybe this is things that you can do to do better, or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Octane, stop yelling at me.
Jeez, Octane.
Hey,
Buddha, what are you doing, man?
I took my bad manner pills today. What can I say? All right, I took my bad manner pills.
I think it's a bit deeper than that, though. It's not like the competitive players are not inclusive to a lot of casual players. I mean, there's a bunch of competitive players that play with casual gamers and everything, and they're fine with that. And especially video games, many video games do not steer away from casual gamers. That's why there are so many casual modes, and such as Smite, League, Dota, StarCraft. They all have casual play, and you can be ranked, but it's not important to casual players. I think the real important thing is that you have to look into is how do you make a game that's the exact same balance for everyone, fit to the casual players and fit to the competitive players. That's what that's what a developer's look is how you can make sure that everyone is happy, because you do want to make casual players happy, but you definitely want to make competitive players happy because that pulls casual players in.
That's a very
It's
good
very
point.
difficult.
Have auto-targeting basic attacks for everybody else.
Yeah.
Get it off later.
Auto-target, right.
Yeah. Aimbot for Smite.
There you go. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump a little bit more. We have 2 last questions before we go ahead and head out, and then we'll roll the interview with Hi-Rez Todd Harris. Question here. It's a little bit longer of a question, but it does build up to the question at the end. A majority of the competitive esports titles start out with a very large casual base and a strong grassroots scene before attempting a competitive scene. With Smite, we saw the complete opposite. Smite came out of the gates almost instantly with a demand for a competitive scene. Do you feel this could come back to hurt Smite? as we are now seeing the grassroots casual scene slowly develop as a good competitive foundation. And I'm actually going to throw this over to Buddha because Buddha and I both come from the StarCraft 2 scene. We know how much like the grassroots scene matters and developing into a competitive scene. And this was one thing that I actually struggled with when I came over to Smite for the first time. I was like there were competitive players just pushing and pushing and pushing for these organizations and pushing for sponsors, but yet they had nothing under their belt. They had like one win in a tournament and they wanted things. So I'm going to throw it to Buddha first as we now see the grassroots scene slowly developing. What are your thoughts kind of on the value of a grassroots scene within a MOBA?
Within a MOBA, I think it can be pretty important. I'm not really sure what the structure is like for the pro scene of Smite, but you have to have the new players, or sorry, not the new players, but the good players that aren't necessarily pro yet. Give them a place to come up and show themselves. Otherwise, like, no one's going to get anywhere, and you're going to have the same players, even if they're not the best, at the very top for the most part. But I don't know that it's going to hurt Smite necessarily. I think it's really a sign of competitive gaming as a whole, in that it's already so relatively big that coming in with a game that already has a competitive scene kind of makes sense to me, right? Like, you don't have to have the game be out for 6 months or a year before you can, or before just having a competitive scene, because that's what everybody is kind of into right now, right? All the games have competitive scenes that are really big, and that's what Smite wants to be. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but the grassroots thing is definitely very important, because as we see with StarCraft right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and poop on StarCraft.
No, go for it.
Pooping on StarCraft.
Yeah, WCS is just, I don't know. I think it's just a disaster right now. Like,
yep.
Blizzard is really trying to take control of everything from top to bottom and have a huge promotion thing. And in theory, it's kind of good, but just the implementation of it, how long it's taking, how easy it is to get just like knocked out or in, and then you're out for like 6 months. There's 6 months of like no professional gaming for you, because StarCraft took all of that away, and you can't get in until the end of the season. So League of Legends has a similar thing with their seasons, but I think it's working a little bit better with how they're doing the promotions and stuff. So I think the grassroots is really important, and it allows people to become pros if they are good enough.
Sure. No, it's a definitely a good answer. Let's go ahead and throw it over to Blake. Blake is the administrator, one of the admins for the Hi-Rez weekly tournaments. So I'll kind of throw this over to you. You kind of see the competitive scene firsthand, but I guess my question goes back to you. What about the grassroots? Do you see it as super valuable at this point, or are we way past that?
I feel like we're past that to a certain degree, and the reason, going back to kind of something that was said in the question of when teams first started forming, and there wasn't really a defined meta. The game had just kind of it was still in closed beta, and you had all of these teams forming, and they wanted sponsors. I think that more or less is the norm nowadays. Like, esports is getting so big and integrated into video game culture. Like, League of Legends got it pushed through this year that their players can be have sponsored work visas, and there's players coming from China and Korea to America to stay here and work and make money. Like, that's huge, that it's looked at as a professional sport. So I think when new games come out of the gate, that's what people just expect now. You don't really, there's no esports grassroots anymore when you have people that are considered professional sports by the government. So, I mean, I do think it probably was more important in the past, but now, I mean, let's say a new game comes out tomorrow. You're going to have people who have been waiting for that game, already have a team of 5 people are ready to get into it. They're already looking for sponsors. They want to start a tournament. Like, that's just normal now.
Gamers are impatient sometimes.
Yeah, right.
They just want to go for it. Go.
Any other, we'll throw it around here. I guess kind of throw it over to Kelly, as your title is esports coordinator. What is your thought there? I mean, you started out, you didn't, when Smite came out, you weren't working for Smite, so you did have an outside perspective. What's your thoughts kind of on this question?
Yeah, I played Smite back in July of last year, so over a year ago, still in closed beta. And I remember watching Lassus. Lassus was the first stream I ever watched, and everyone was so friendly, and you did have this grassroots feel. And as the months went on, people were like, "Oh, well, Smite's different because it's not like the community's not like League or Dota or Han. Like everyone's nicer and friendlier." And then you see in the most recent months, people be like, "Oh, I miss the old community, and oh, there's so many more BM people now." And yes, that's a negative thing to a sense, but it also shows that it's growing. The more people you get, the more variables you get, meaning that you're going to have more BM or toxic community members, and that's just a part of it growing. So I agree with Blake that the grassroots feel, it's nice, but that's really not a part of Smite anymore. We just had a $20,000 tournament at PAX, a €15,000 at Gamescom. We're partnered with Tencent, which a lot of people don't get and they're not hype over, but the people that know esports know that partnering with Tencent is huge. I remember we were talking about it in the office, like as a joke, like even if we flop in like China, we're still going to be incredibly more successful than we are now. Because the player base that Tencent holds is more than, like gamers wise, is more than the population of the United States. It's like 500,000 people use their portal, which is like their version of Steam. And that's substantial. Just being free and being in that market is going to give us, it's going to make Smite bigger. It's going to open so many more doors, and you can't really look to that grassroots feel anymore. It's awesome that there's still so many people a part of the community that have been there since the beginning, such as Lassus, such as Drybear and everyone else, and DM, but it's so much more substantial that we're getting bigger, we're getting a bigger player base, and that Smite is growing to what it is now.
No, that's a good point. Any last thoughts before we move on? Katrixxia, any thoughts, or kind of everything already said?
I mean, yeah, most things have really been said.
Okay.
I don't want to regurgitate what anyone else has said. So.
No, that's fine.
Here, I'll type it out for you. Hang on.
That's right, type it out. And last question we'll kind of end off on here is, what are a few things the Smite esports scene can learn from MOBA giants like Dota, League of Legends, Han, in order to continue rising in the industry? I mean, Smite is growing insane. I mean, I remember when they talked about, when they hit the 1 million accounts mark, and that was like huge. But the Smite is growing at an insane rate. What can we learn though in order to not fall off, in order to not mess up? What can we as a community, what can the esports scene necessarily learn from this? I'll throw it to Katrixxia first. Anything you think we can learn from Dota, League?
Well, I think that Smite is going to, like Kelly was saying earlier with Tencent, like Tencent is really the reason why Riot was successful with League. And so, if anything, the fact that Smite has partnered with Tencent, or Hi-Rez has partnered with Tencent, like that is going to guide Smite in what I'm hoping will be the right direction, like they did with League. And so really, I think that it's more in the hands of the Chinese overlords now, so to speak, than anything else. And I'm confident that it will be, it is in the right hands, and it will become something huge.
Good point. Let's go ahead and throw it over to Blake. Blake, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see how partnering with Tencent compares to, well, I guess what it means for North America to a certain degree. How do we reach out to that community and get their feedback, and how does their community differ from the concerns of the North American community? And then, that partnership, like, I don't know a ton about how League handles that partnership. Like, I'm sure that, they have a dedicated office over there. So I don't really know. I'm just interested to see how that partnership kind of grows, and whether it, is like, if it's tight or, just kind of what happens there, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot hinging on that. I completely agree. I mean, most of us think it's definitely going to skyrocket the game and it's going to go extremely well, but a lot does hinge on that. But I can see why Hi-Rez did make that move. I mean, it's a very, very smart business move in that direction. Let's go ahead and throw it over to Buddha. Anything? I know you don't have a ton of experience in the esports scene, but you've seen a little bit.
What you mean in the Smite scene?
Yes. What do you think? Oh, sorry, I said esports. What do you think? What can we learn from games that you played plenty of?
Well, I think it's already headed in the right direction, right? You guys have a lot of events at expos, with huge tournaments, and there's already online events on weekends and stuff like that. with weekly Smite tournament and stuff. But I think the number one thing that I've really been seeing lately with League and Dota is spectator experience. And there are a few things that the games do a lot differently that I think are really cool. So League just implemented a team fight overlay where it removes a lot of the overlay, so you can just see who's alive, who's dead, who's close to the fight, the mini map, and really get a better feel for how the fight's going and kind of immerse yourself a little bit more without all of the random data all over the place for the team fight, because that's the most important thing going on. And on the other hand, I think I really loved what Dota did. I don't know if you guys watched the International, but
yes,
where they had a ton of streams, which was cool or whatever. But I thought the coolest thing was you could sit in the game and spectate wherever you wanted to spectate, or you could put it on one of the commentators' spectator view, and you could listen to the commentators while in game without having to have the stream open.
Sure.
And you could have your banners up to support your favorite team. And they even let you buy the banners and to support the teams and stuff. And I thought the International 3 was a really, really cool experience from a spectator point of view. Even though I don't really watch that much Dota, I really enjoyed it. So I think as far as competitive scene goes, yes, balance, all that stuff obviously important, but the viewers are really the centric part to take away, I think.
Yeah, the model that they put together with the Dota 2 International was amazing. Now, granted, the game was built for those features, whereas taking a game that's already, like, for example, Smite, and going, okay, let's go ahead and rework it in order to support all these viewers in a spectator mode. I mean, I don't even know. Is there a max, Kelly, on how many people you can have in spectator? Do you know?
Oh, God. I just know that there was one time where we were, playing, it was Dignitas versus Cognitive, which was a very anticipated match, and so many people were trying to spectate it that it actually crashed the game client.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a max, but I'm certain to some extent there is.
Sure, and so it all comes down to that. I mean, and Dota 2 did some really cool things, like I forget the feature they did where they had a whole fantasy league built in where you could go ahead and put that together. That type of stuff is amazing.
It's like a book or something in the game?
Yes.
They had a compendium.
Yeah, the compendium. That is one of the most amazing esports viewer experiences ever. I had someone telling me about that, and it was fantastic. I'm so jealous that Smite doesn't have that, and it's so amazing. For a spectator point of view for a competitive scene, it makes it that much more interactive instead of just sitting and watching a stream.
So I guess I'll throw this last over to you, Kelly. What can we learn from Dota and MOBA and other MOBAs like League of Legends that, from an esports perspective, we can apply hopefully in the future?
Compendium, or is that what it's called?
Yes. Yes.
If we could have something like that in Smite, that would be awesome. But outside of that, there really isn't much that we can learn. We're taking the steps that we can, because we're not really up to where Dota 2 is or League is, so we can't really try to be reflect what they're doing and be what they're being, because it just won't work. We're not big enough yet. We don't have the amount of teams yet. We don't have the amount of pull and push. But reflect where we are for Smite, I think we're doing pretty good. We had an NA Invitational, EU Invitational. Yep. We're making sure that the esports scene isn't just a weekly every week. And honestly, because there's not a lot of teams are very standoffish to join the NA or EU weekly, and I think having these community-run tournaments such as Smite Tube or Code Green, etc., yep. The Denial Casual NA and EU, it's fantastic. It allows players that wouldn't normally be a part of the tournament scene feel like they're getting better and growing and being able to be more comfortable to actually get into our official weeklies. So I feel like something like that we could learn off of Dota and League is just they do leagues, where they'll have a month where all these teams play each other, and then they'll try and get out of that, and having monthlies and that kind of stuff. I think going in that direction would be really interesting, especially doing something like what Dota does in TI3, but we're just not at that point yet.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Before we go ahead and kind of transition out of the kind of panel discussion, anyone have any last thoughts or anything like that on any of the topics that we discussed that maybe you thought about now and you want to bring up or anything like that? Alrighty. Well, we are, guys, going to go ahead and say goodbye here shortly just to our guest. I want to definitely thank them for joining us. We will be rolling the interview with, it is pre-recorded as of like 3 hours ago, with Hi-Rez COO and co-founder Todd Harris. I will give you guys a little heads up. He does go ahead and release some information about the upcoming patch in the interview, so make sure that you guys do check it out. I will be rolling that after this, but before we go ahead and say goodbye, let's go ahead and go around the table as to where people can find you guys when you're not here as a guest. Let's go ahead and start out with Katrixxia.
Sorry, for my where to find me?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can find me on my stream, twitch.tv/Katrixxia, twitter.com/Katrixxia, youtube.com/Katrixxia, and I have a Facebook page, and it's /Katrixxia TV because Katrixxia was taken for some reason. It was weird. I looked at it, and it's like some random person. It's strange.
I understand. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Let's go ahead and throw it over to Blake.
Hey, you can find me at mBlakew on Twitter, twitch.tv/mBlakew. You can find me in-game, mBlakew, if you need to talk about the North American or European tournaments, getting your teams involved or anything like that. Feel free to hit me up, and I'll definitely point you in the right direction. I also want to post a link. Do you all have links in your chat?
I do. Go for it. You're more than welcome.
Okay. So.
I am not. I can ban him, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's just gonna be a bunch of gifts.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of
Oh, we had a gift of Kelly prior to her showing up. It was a good one.
Oh God.
Was this a couch failing one? Is that the
Oh
one?
my God, that gift! The best gift ever. Can I tell the story of that gift?
Please,
Go
go
on.
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I've actually been streaming on my own personal channel since August, and around December of last year, I was a huge part of the FGC and that scene.
Okay.
And a sponsored player's mother lost her house in a fire like a week before Christmas, and he was actually someone that I knew. And so I wanted to run a charity stream to help raise money for his family because it was like a really crappy time, and the FGC is a very like tight-knit grassroots kind of family. And so I did a charity stream. We raised $3,000 to $4,000, I believe.
Wow.
And it was a 72-hour stream. So I streamed for 20 hours straight, which sucks. And I believe over the period of 72 hours, I streamed like 60 of them. It was very painful. But I was doing like people like, oh, sing this song, and we'll donate money. I'm like,
Sure.
yeah, sure. I don't mind acting like an ass if it means I'm raising money for a good cause. So one of my friends, who was another streamer, was like, Kelly, you should sing the Pokemon theme song, which I know by heart. And I was like,
boy.
yeah, sure, I got this. So I started playing it, and I turned it onto our couch cam, and I was starting to sing it and everything, which you can't see in the video, and I'm like pointing and dancing. And this wasn't at my apartment. This is at my friend's apartment. So I thought that the cushion was attached to the back of the couch. So I wanted to jump and like start singing to my brother, or he's one of my like closest friends. I call him my brother. And the cushion flipped from underneath me, and I like face planted, but it actually like was perfectly fine. Right after the gift, I like jumped back up and started streaming again, and it raised like $300, so it was worth it. But one of my moderators was like, yeah, I made it into a GIF and I posted it everywhere, and I was like, son of a bitch. Like, I was so...
All right, Katrixxia, please make sure you do post that in chat, by the way. You're the one...
Oh, the link?
But
Yes,
that
the link.
GIF, like, I was so embarrassed by it at first, but then, like, I had so many people messaging me being like, I had such a crappy day, and then just, like, seeing that video made me so happy. And I was like, well, shit, and it was posted on, like, a half a dozen major GIF websites.
Yeah.
Like, all over everywhere. And I was like, I can't feel bad about it anymore. Like, it made people happy. It raised money for a good cause. Like, if it wasn't me, I would be laughing hysterically. Like, it's awesome. And I find it hilarious, too.
Yeah, it was pretty good before the show. I was like, I don't know if Kelly's going to show up. Like I've never actually talked to her in person before, not really sure, if she's usually late or what happens. And then we're like, well,
I was in the middle of work.
I
I'm
was
so
like,
sorry.
I was like, we'll just throw this up, and Katrixxia threw it up, and I was like, this is awesome. I was like, we should put it up.
If you look at the couch, there's like 4 or 5 arcade sticks all around. That's how you can tell like it was a part of the FGC. It was part of that event. It wasn't just a random mishap.
Yeah.
It was for a reason, kind of.
That guy in the GIF, though, he just stares like I don't even know No,
Like I said, that's
with
my brother.
anything. Yeah.
Like he's practically my brother. We're super close. So when it happened, he was just like, "Really, Kelly? Really?"
Yeah. I am going to go ahead and throw it back to Blake because he has a website I'd like for him to go ahead and promote and talk about. So Blake, go ahead and go over that a little bit for people.
Yeah, so I was talking to Todd, the COO of Hi-Rez, and he has allowed my fiance and I to make some custom Smite T-Shirts. And I was just going to post a link to the store, if you wanted to request a design or something like that. You could request one, we'll make it. We have Todd's blessing on this, so I just thought it was kind of cool since there's not a lot of custom Smite swag out there. So this is I posted the link. Octane just posted the GIF 40 times and said it was the link.
I just
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, I had to give more attention to it. I'm sorry.
But yeah, that's my shameless plug. It's just kind of something we're doing in our spare time now. So.
Excellent. No, I think that's awesome.
Custom Smite swag.
Now, people are always looking for Smite shirts. I've always been looking for some to rock on stream while I am streaming, and it's so limited. So that's really cool to see that. So yeah, thank you very much for doing that, you and your wife. I think that's awesome. And some of those shirts are pretty cool. Let's go ahead and throw it over to Buddha. Buddha, when you are not hanging out with me, I know sometimes you and I do play some viewer games. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at BuddhaSC2, and you can find me on Twitch at OctaneProSCII, because I don't stream anymore. Only Octane does, and I just hop on here.
Thank you, sir. And finally, over to Kelly.
Oh, hi, the couch fail girl. What's
yes,
up?
That's right.
How you guys doing? So you guys can find. I have 2 streams actually. I stream on Smite Game from 1 p.m. Eastern till 4 p.m. Eastern, and I actually stream on my personal channel, the one that I've been streaming on since June of last year. And that is twitch.tv/Hello Kelly Link. I've been typing in chat with that name actually because I forgot to switch over to Hi-Rez Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Hi-Rez Kelly. I don't have a YouTube. And if you guys have any concerns, questions, or comments, please feel free to email me at klink, K-L-I-N-K, at hirezstudios.com. Link is my last name, so that's why it's Klink, a.k.a. Clink.
Clink. Very
Clink.
nice.
Yeah, Clink
Awesome.
at hirezstudios.com.
Awesome. Go ahead and throw it over to my co-host, Risty. Risty, once again, thank you for joining me tonight. Where can people find you? I know you do a pretty good amount of YouTube. Go ahead and spill it.
Well, I had to remember to put the mute button off there. I was like, I mean, quick. Now, you can find me at pretty much everything's Risty UK, youtube.com/Risty UK, twitch.tv, and I do have a Facebook, but I don't really use it that much, and Twitter at Risty UK. So everything's there, all easy to find.
Excellent. Well, sounds good, guys. Right before we do go ahead and roll the interview, you could check me out. Everything Octane over at OctaneProGaming.com. The streams over there, YouTube, bio, Twitter information, everything's over there. So please go ahead and check that out. And I will go ahead and plug, I'm starting another Smite podcast tomorrow night. It's going to be at 9:30 p.m. It's going to be called Smite Talk Radio. And it will be another podcast allowing for viewers to go ahead and call in and have Smite discussions. So check it out, Smite Talk Radio, another Smite podcast starting up tomorrow. But anyways, guys, we're going to go ahead and head out. Make sure you do check us out next week, Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, for a typical Smite update show where we go ahead and go over the patch notes, go over recent esports news, along with community content. So stay tuned, guys, and here comes the interview. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special segment of the Smite Update. Today I have a special guest we'll be interviewing. I'd like to introduce Todd Harris of Hi-Rez Studios. Thank you, Todd, for joining me.
You're welcome. It's awesome to be here.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and jump into it. For community members that don't know, who is Todd Harris and what do you do at Hi-Rez Studios?
All right. So I am actually one of the founders of the studio. Rez Gorin, who people know from his Twitch stream appearances, was kind enough to, in 2005, talk with me about the idea of starting a game studio. So my official title is Chief Operating Officer, and what that means is really at Hi-Rez we try to not have too much management. We try to keep most people working on making the game better, but we do need a little bit of overhead. So Rez focuses mainly on game mechanics. He loves to give input on that. Stu is the other name that you'll hear sometimes as a part of the management team, and he's basically super project manager for development these days. And for myself, I do a lot of the management of studio operations. So that's everything from hiring people, sometimes firing people, the boring functions that have to do with just running a business like legal and HR sort of things. I also focus a lot on building our external functions. So marketing, PR, relationships with folks like Tencent. Yep. So together between Rez, Stu, and myself, we try to make sure all the boring overhead stuff gets done so that our talented dev team can make Smite as good as possible, and we just try to remove as many obstacles or in their way as possible.
That's pretty cool because most people, think of a corporation having your huge hierarchy and all that stuff, and it doesn't sound like you guys are like that. It sounds like you guys are quite innovative and kind of up to date with the times per se when it comes down to your management style.
Pretty flat, for sure.
Yeah.
There's some good things and there's some challenging things, but decisions get made quickly, and we're definitely flat. We don't have a lot of hierarchy in the company.
Sure. So let's go ahead and jump back. What did you do before working for Hi-Rez Studios? You said that came along in about 2005, and so I guess what brought you into the kind of game development industry?
So when I first got into computers in basically junior high, really before junior high, but when I was in, I think it was 7th grade, I got my first IBM PC, and this is way back in the day. I mean, this was literally one of the first PCs off the assembly line because I had messed around with Apple II, I had messed around with Commodore, but my dad was an IBMer for 30 years. And when the first PC came out, there was actually an employee lottery to get the very first batch, and we were lucky to get one. So we literally had one of the first ones. And at that time, there were about 2 games for the PC. There was Adventure, text-based Adventure, and there was Olympic Decathlon, where you hit the 2 keys as fast as possible, and that was the innovative gameplay. And then Flight Simulator came a little bit later. So I taught myself to program, wanting to get into games, and went on to do computer science, went to school for computer science, and always thought I'd make games, but out of school I ended up taking a different path and doing retail software. So it was building software to automate retail stores at NCR. And then after NCR, I went to this little company called Radiant Systems, which was founded by this guy named Rez Todd, with him and his brother. And so basically that's where myself, Rez, Stu Chisholm, also our chief technical officer, Mike Dudgeon, Nabil, who's a name that people know, some of our programmers like Chris. Basically, a lot of history of working on retail software. And after about 15 years of doing that boring stuff, we got to do games. So that's my background.
Wow. That's quite the resume there. I mean, coming over from there, and did Rez just approach you one day and be like, "Hey, we're done in the retail industry. Let's go ahead and just move into gaming because we all love it and it's our passion"? Or was gaming not really talked about then?
It's pretty close to your first story. I mean, Rez, the whole time he was CEO of Radiant Systems and BlueCube, he was playing games like crazy. So I always say, by day he was a CEO, and at night he was just hardcore gamer. And the same with a lot of our programmers. I'm less of a hardcore gamer. I'm a little more of a sampler, but I definitely kept my hobby alive the whole time. And so, in 2005. Really, it started with just a couple programmers. It was just a side project where there were 2 programmers that were working on a little project. But I think for Rez, probably more than 20 years of retail software, he was just done. And he even though the company was doing really well, but he was kind of less involved in the day-to-day management. And he
Yeah.
said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this for real, like not just 2 programmers, but like actually putting in a lot of money
Sure.
and trying to make a large scale project. And I think he thought maybe people would think he was crazy if
Yes, very much so.
if he had 2 people in there, maybe it would actually be real. So
Cool.
so yeah, and it didn't take me long to hop on board. So that's what started Hi-Rez.
Sweet. One of Hi-Rez's products is Smite, a MOBA style game. To possibly interested gamers, what is Smite and what makes it so different from every other MOBA in the industry right now?
So there's a lot of MOBAs. I won't explain MOBA. I'll assume people know MOBA. So Smite is different in a few key ways that most people recognize right away. The first is obviously the camera, which is third person,
Yep.
rather than over the top isometric. So that's the one that jumps out at you right away. Second, kind of going along with that camera angle, the movement is WASD movement, and your shots are aim skill shots. So you get more of that action gameplay rather than as much tab targeting. So that's the second big item, is this action skill shot element.
Sure.
The third is obviously the theme. We pull on gods from various mythologies and pantheons and literature and put them all in one battlefield. So that makes it a bit different in that it's grounded in these myths and cultures that actually are out there in the world that people are familiar with, versus as many, I'll say, recently made up characters. And then the fourth is the variety of modes. Most MOBAs have one primary mode and maybe a secondary. And with Smite, we are more like action games or shooters in that we wanted to have a variety of different modes. And so, as you know, we have 5-ish modes that all offer a very different experience. And there's certainly one that we emphasize currently for competitive play,
Yep.
which is Conquest, a more traditional 3-lane Dota-style map. But there's other ones like Arena that appeal to a different audience and bring in a different group. And we think that's helping to grow the MOBA genre because it's offering these alternative ways of playing. So there's other, more minor differences, but those are the ones that jump out right away.
Excellent. Thanks for explaining that. There are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes within the game of Smite. I'd like to take some time to go into the backbone of the game and talk a little bit about the Smite servers. So right now within Smite, how many server regions are offered to players?
So as far as regions, basically there's currently North America and Europe as 2 regions. Those are the 2 primary markets that we're focused on right now. And so those are the region selections.
Okay, and then this will kind of funnel into our next question here, which is, what city in North America and Europe are these servers housed in? And are there plans to relocate them as Smite grows in population?
So we do plan on expanding them or relocating.
Okay.
It's a pretty fluid process. I'll get to the question,
Sure.
but one thing that's also important for people to know is we spend a lot of time architecting the back end so that it's, I guess, cloud-like. Cloud is the big buzzword that people hear that implies that the server can be located anywhere, and that is the goal. There's definitely different ping and different considerations, but the nice thing about Smite, compared and very different from our first game, Global Agenda, is that the old days you really required this big data center and it was hard to move. With a cloud-friendly architecture, you can move more easily, and you can also test out different vendors more easily.
Okay.
So that's something that that the architecture lets us do, is test out from time to time different vendors to make sure they're delivering the performance that we need. So currently, like as of this day, when we're having this interview, the European servers are located physically in Amsterdam,
Okay.
and the North American servers for Smite are located in Virginia.
Okay.
But that could change and expand, and we have actually moved them from time to time, and will continue to do so during beta, because that gives us useful information so that we ensure we're delivering the best experience possible. The other thing I'll point out is that's
Sure.
where the match servers are located, which means when you're playing a game of Conquest or Arena, that's where your 10 people are playing, basically. That server is going back and forth with the client. We have other servers that we call core servers that do more central, like login. They have the database, which saves all the persistent information about the game. They handle functions like some of the party information and chat information. And those core servers are located in Atlanta. So you can think of it at a high level, like you're talking to the core servers, and then when a match is assembled, you're on a match or an instance-based server, and that's where you're in Virginia or Amsterdam.
Oh, okay, so that's pretty cool. So kind of all the inner workings in the brain goes on in Atlanta, but then your regional servers are kind of, as you talked about, in Virginia and Amsterdam, which allows you guys, as time goes on, for growth to be able to just add servers, I guess, as the regions expand without having to worry about moving your brain per se. Would that make sense?
That's exactly. And the brain servers, more or less, there are fewer number of servers, and they can scale to a pretty large population.
Sure.
Where the other ones, we actually add additional server boxes, either in that same location or in other locations as the population grows.
Okay, that makes sense. That's pretty cool, and that's really, really nice, because I don't think a lot of people realize, I think a lot of the community doesn't understand, we haven't been told about that before from what I've heard, and so with that type of information, it's good to know, like, hey, there isn't just one server in Europe that's operating everything. I assume it's something like a cluster going on within the servers, so that's really cool to hear. I guess my question there is, looking to the future, we have Smite Beta opening up, I believe it is, in the Asian market in October. Any plans yet that you can release as to what city you're trying to focus that server around, or not yet?
So not yet, and that will really be Tencent's decision.
Okay.
So the way the responsibilities divide, we, Hi-Rez, will continue to directly serve North America and Europe. We'll manage those servers, the locations of those servers. Tencent will be responsible for choosing the locations within other territories, starting in China. Now, fortunately, they're China's biggest internet company, so they have a really good idea of where those servers should be located, and we're going to leave that to them.
Leave it to the experts, right?
Exactly. Now, just for your other point, so people understand, the core servers that are located in Atlanta, those are, on the order of magnitude of let's say 5 to 10 server boxes, very big, beefy, octa-core boxes.
Okay.
And the instance servers that are in currently Amsterdam and Virginia, we play with the numbers some, and we test over time different, more powerful hardware versus less powerful. But we're talking about collectively between 90 and 120 boxes there.
Wow.
So it's definitely not one server. These are clusters with many, many boxes. And again, we continue to play with different numbers there as we improve server performance versus as population grows. But that's the order of magnitude we're talking about as far as server boxes.
That's awesome. I'm in the IT field, and that just blows me away to think of something at that level. So that's pretty impressive. Regardless of players selecting to play in North America, sometimes they're placed on the European region servers. Can you kind of explain why that happens?
So the reason that happens is, first of all, I'll say we look at that a lot. And region locking confirmed in this interview, by the way, for the next patch.
Thank you.
You get the scoop. If Harris hasn't already spoiled it on a Twitch chat somewhere.
He never does that. Come on now.
No, but up until now, in the way Live behaves, you set a preference, but it is only a preference. And so if you are playing at a time when the population is perhaps low, or you're playing a less popular mode, or you're someone that's hard for the matchmaker to handle because you're exceptionally good, perhaps. It does the best job it can, but the current live logic says, if I can't put you in your region, I will go ahead and give you a match outside your region. And from what we've looked at, 90% of the games that are launched, all players do have their preferred region. So it does a good job, but it's not perfect, and it isn't 100%, and so people definitely have that experience, and that's why. Now, to follow that up, I will say that based on feedback, in the very next patch, for all timed queues, we plan to implement region locking, which means that you will only get on the region that you've selected, and if there's a low population issue or you're hard to match for whatever reason, you're going to have to actually change that region in order to get a match, but you shouldn't get put on a server that you don't specify. So we'll see how that goes. We expect that'll be received positively, but there's a consequence with all these things, so we'll just have to evaluate it. But that's planned for the next patch.
Excellent. Well, very happy to hear that. That actually blows away my next question, so thank you very much. So if you are in North America, let's say, and you there are no matches available to you just because of, as you said, depending on the type of player you are, skill level and stuff like that, will we continue to get that screen that says was not able to find a match, or will you continue to sit in queue? Or is that something you can release or not?
I'm going to have to check with Chris. I believe you'll get the you were not able to be placed in a match, and then it would re-queue you, but I don't know for sure. So.
Okay, sure, no problem. Players sometimes will complain of high ping times, which affect gameplay in a negative manner. When this occurs, what exactly occurs on the server side, or is it on the client side that is affecting and making that high ping time?
So if they're actually getting high ping, of course, sometimes if you're having a PC client rendering issue or performance issue, that will feel clunky, but it's not really ping, right? So that's in a different category. But if it's high ping, it is either that you were placed on a server outside your region, which again should go away with the next patch.
Great.
Another possibility that players might suspect is that the server is just busy, which is very, very unlikely. That's an easy thing for us to monitor, and our CPUs on the server are constantly monitored. And as I just shared, we have plenty of servers, so that's not the issue that the server can't keep up, at least not currently. It could one day be an issue, but it hasn't been. The most likely issue is really related to the last mile that they call it, which is the routing of packets from your PC to the server is not taking an optimal route. And we definitely do see some of that. And oftentimes it's specific to one internet service provider or to one location. And those are things that we're always trying to collect information and gather, but again, that's not an issue really specific to Smite. It's part of online games in general, and that's the most likely potential issue.
Sure. Looking to the next year, we will have 3 regions to pick from worldwide: North America, Europe, and Asia. Is Hi-Rez Studios' future goal to have worldwide server coverage, allowing for players, regardless of their global location, to play on at least one server under 75 ping? What details can you give on that?
I mean, I think that the reality is it's a market-by-market decision. So certainly we all hope that Smite grows, that Smite has appeal in various markets and different geographies: Brazil, Russia, Southeast Asia, Korea. Those are all major markets that, assuming the audience is there, we would look to deliver that server. But it is a market-by-market decision. So at this point, we can only talk about the sequence of markets that we're looking at, which is US and Europe now, China next. And after that China process goes through, then we'll look at the next markets for us to go after. Because as you can probably imagine, there's a decision around server location that's important. There's also a decision around localizing the game, working with marketing partners so that people know about the game and just know that it's in their area, and support. That's also if people have a question so that they can get support. So there's a few things to consider besides location of servers in order to have it be a good experience for people. So we hope the game spreads, and if so, we'll continue to spread servers as we go.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Todd, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit down with me. I think from everyone in the community and myself, we'd like to say thank you to your entire team for all the hard work that you do on Smite, because it's such an amazing game for us to play for free, because it is free to play. Well, folks, this has been a special segment of the Smite Update. Please check out the Smite Update every week on Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern over at twitch.tv/OctanePro SCII. Once again, Todd, thank you very much for joining us.
You catching my Chung-Ah shirt?
Oh, what are you telling us? We're going to see more of those.
Just shout out to Anna for making it. We'll try to get some more.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Todd.
All right. Thanks, guys.